Whether you're hitting the road or kicking back in the cab, it's time to take a load off with Big Rig Banter. Powered by alltruckjobs.com, your source for finding the trucking jobs drivers really want. Get ready to shift into gear and let the conversations roll.
All right, hello and welcome, truckers. The date is September 18th, and you're listening to the 38th episode of Big Rig Banter. And I'm your co-host, Troy Diffenderfer.
And I'm your favorite co-host, Lene Rule.
And Lene, how are you today? I see you've survived your birthday weekend.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Turned 31, so, it's like all the exciting birthdays are over now.
Yeah, that's true. But once again, congrats to Lene on turning 31.
How are you, Troy?
I'm doing good. I'm getting ready to embark on my honeymoon, so I'm very excited. We're going up to New England, so truckers, again, if you have suggestions, feel free to drop us a line on Facebook or Twitter. Let us know the best places in New England. We're going to hit places like Boston, Salem, probably Vermont, and then we're going to finish off in Maine and then head back. So I'm excited to get away from the office, and it should be a good time.
I am personally really excited to hear about Troy's road trip adventures. Just as someone who's driven across the country twice, I know he'll have some good stories for us when he gets back. And for those of you who don't know, Troy did just get married a few weekends ago. So congratulations, Troy.
Yes, thank you, Lene. Lene was at the wedding, and it was very beautiful and wonderful, and we had perfect weather, so it all went smoothly, luckily, and I can just breathe a sigh of relief finally. Now
it's
that
over.
Everything's in the past and we can get moving forward. So I appreciate that, Lene. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for inviting me. It was beautiful.
But truckers, before we get into today's episode, we just want to give another thanks to those participating in the trivia contest. So once again, thank you. But Lene, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we are talking about a heated topic on whether or not the driving age for truck drivers should be lowered to 18.
Lene, what were you like when you were 18? Are you allowed to say that on the air? Or do I want to know? Should we skip it?
Actually, I feel like in some ways I was more responsible at 18 than I am now. I had a full-time job. I was working like 50 hours a week. I had a long-term boyfriend. I was saving money for a house, so I was pretty responsible at 18.
Nice.
What about you, Troy?
I think I was too. I didn't really get into any shenanigans until college, so I feel like then I was still young and innocent before I hit the real world and hit college, and we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I do think
detail.
There's something to be said about when you're 18, you feel like this pressure to, be an adult because you legally are one. But then you turn 21, you go to college, and then things don't seem as serious as they did before. And then I think, now that we're, you're heading towards your 30s, I'm there, you kind of look back, and now I think, oh God, like how naive I was at 18.
That's true, and I think maturity is a big factor, and when we talk to our guests today, that's something we're going to talk about when we're discussing the possibility of maybe lowering the CDL age to 18.
Yeah, so Troy got to talk to someone, Todd McCann. He is a fellow podcaster like us, but he is also a truck driver, and he just has one interesting take on the subject as someone who's been in the industry for a long time. So let's give that a listen.
All right, I'm here with Todd McCann from the Trucker Dump podcast. You might have heard him on a previous episode before. Todd, how are you doing today?
Great. You?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about this. It's a pretty controversial and I think really interesting subject, on our Facebook page, and I'm sure you've talked to truckers that are have come across these articles talking about maybe lowering the CDL driving age to 18. And it's definitely has some some people have some strong opinions about it, that's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Imagine that, truckers with strong opinions.
I know. So for you, Todd, how old were you when you first got your CDL?
I was 27, I think, something like that.
And how'd your training prepare you for hitting the road? I mean, at that age, obviously, you're kind of getting into the swing of things. And do you think your age affected that? Do you think since you were a little maybe older getting into it, how did that affect you?
Yeah, I think, because by that time I was married, newly married, and we had just decided to get into trucking. And, we thought it through, as a young married couple, we really thought it through. And I think because of that, we were more prepared for it. We were more mature and, just able to tackle the road better that way, than just coming, maybe straight out of high school and going, straight into it. That's, you've heard the strong opinions. That's a little scary.
For sure. And, how do you feel personally about changing the CDL age to 18? Or maybe if you don't want to give your opinion, what are some of the opinions you've definitely heard? I'm sure you've talked to people that have talked about it.
Well, I'll give you both. I'm a podcaster, so I don't mind giving my opinion about things. No, but you always go back when things are like, should the drinking age be 18 or whatever? You always go back to the fact that if they can fight for our country, at 18, why can't they do these other things? Mm-hmm. And, I don't really know the answer to this, but I know what I feel myself is that 18-year-olds just aren't quite prepared yet. I mean, there's been study after study saying that the male brain does not form completely until they're about 25 years old. So really, we've already got drivers out here, that are 21 years old driving intrastate, and then 23-year-olds driving over the road, and their brain isn't fully functional yet. So it's just a little scary, quite honestly. I mean, I know 18-year-olds. I know what I was like when I was 18. I don't think I was probably prepared to drive a truck, but I'm sure there are other individuals who are more mature by nature. It's sad we have to blanket, the whole group. We can't just give them some kind of assessment test and say this person's mature enough and this one isn't. But, that's got discrimination written all over it. So nobody wants to go there. It's going to be 18 or, they're going to set it at 18 for everybody or not at all. I personally, I don't want to see it happen. I just think it's bringing on nothing but trouble. And honestly, I just don't think I don't think the real issue is getting drivers in at a younger age. I think we just need, there's this constant battle of, is there a driver shortage or is there just a shortage of trucking companies who want to treat their drivers well enough to keep them? That's a big argument. And I personally think it's a little bit of both, but I think it's mostly the fact that there are just a lot of drivers who are mistreated, not paid well enough. And I think there's just other ways to address this, air quotes, driver shortage thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I think we've talked about it before. We've had podcast episodes on the driver shortage and trying to figure out whether it's separate fact from fiction and whether it is a myth. And I think another thing is thinking about some of those other untapped demographics that might help, not just the young drivers, but, obviously the veterans and the female drivers that they could be looking at too.
Yeah, both of those segments are huge. And even older people, people who are willing to get out of, or who want to get out of some career. Maybe they're just tired of their desk job or whatever, and they want to get out and see the country. Their kids are gone out of the house, so they don't have that tying them back. Maybe them and their wife get back, take on a new career, become truckers. I think a lot of times people think they won't hire if you're older. I know my father-in-law was like that, and he was in his late 50s, I think, when he started. Mm-hmm. And, he was just like, man, I don't think anybody's going to hire me because I'm old. And I'm like, dude, you're not old. Well, he is old, but, I was just like, they are going to jump all over you. And that's exactly what happened. He went to school, he got out, and he had just job offers running out his ears, So it's like you said, it's military. Women, they're only 7% of the industry, I think, is the last percentage I heard, and that's just crazy because women can do this job. I mean, we got them out there. They're doing it all the time. They're doing flatbed work. If you're a trucker and you're a female and you can do flatbed work, you can do any trucking job.
Yeah.
So that is a big limitation there. Just the limitation is the fact that we're not getting the word out well enough, to let these women know that they can do this job.
I want to go back to the point you made about the older generation. One of our former guests, Pax Rolf, he emailed in some opinions to me, which I thanked him for, and he made a good point. Do you think, going to the other end of the spectrum, do you think as truckers get older, they should be required to whether retake their test or perform some kind of assessment test? Because I know he made a good point that he's seen drivers, regardless of age, that are not good drivers or not safe on the road, and it's not just an issue of being young.
Yeah, boy, that's a sticky question, isn't it? I remember when my dad was aging, it was that same question too. He probably shouldn't be driving, but do you take that guy's freedom away?
Yeah.
And the same with a trucker who's been doing it for 30, 40 years. How do you tell him you're not good enough to drive this truck anymore?
Mm-hmm.
But it is a matter of public safety, right? So I think you almost have to require it. I mean, I know a lot of guys at the company I'm working for right now. I've heard of a lot of guys who are in their upper 70s, and they're just still trucking along. They're still safe drivers. They've still got all these, accident-free miles. I think probably, like you said, they ought to go through another driving test or something like that. Not just the written, but an actual skills-involved test and see if they still have it. If they do, let them go, and if they don't, shut them down. And that way, it's not the family shutting them down or the company shutting them down. It's the government. And who doesn't like to blame the government for things, right?
And Todd, just to wrap things up, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but maybe give me 3 traits you would look for in a young trucker, whether it be 18 or 21 or whenever they are able to obtain their CDL. What are maybe 3 things that you really can say, oh, all right, they have these 3 traits, then maybe I think they're cut out for this?
Well, I know the first one that came to mind is probably not maybe what you're thinking, but I'm thinking antisocial.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just the type of person who doesn't like to be around people all the time, and you're not, partying with your friends all the time, and you just like to hang and chill,
mm-hmm.
trucking would be right up there. I mean, right in line with what they want to do, because you are alone for long periods of time. I mean, you can talk to other people if you'd like, but you don't have to. That's the beauty of it, I think that another one is just general maturity in general. If you got somebody that is, still getting in trouble with the law or with their parents, they can't even obey their parents for Pete's sake. How are they going to go out on the road and get a CDL and hit the road? And I don't know. That doesn't sound like a plan for me. If you're immature, please don't come out here. Please, please, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a third thing is maybe just someone who is a hard worker. You can't lollygag when you're out here as a trucker. I know a lot of people think, that, you're just sitting behind a wheel. And that's true, but you have to get up and self-motivate every single day. Companies hate drivers who they have to constantly be on top of them. So if you're a hard worker and you're willing to, give up your social life, get out here and learn, I think you might be, suited for trucking.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, Todd. Again, it's Todd McCann. You can catch him on the Trucker Dump podcast. It's a great podcast to listen to. We're big fans over here, of course. And once again, I appreciate you coming on the show.
You bet.
All right, and thanks to Troy and Todd for that interesting conversation and their take on the driving age being lowered to 18.
Thanks, Lene. And once again, truckers, I did talk to another person, Pax Rolf, over at Melton Trucks. We've had him on the podcast before, and he was able to email me some answers to some of the questions we had asked Todd, and he made another good point, again, about the driver shortage and maybe that age kind of doesn't really matter, and this shortage isn't really a shortage problem, but more of a driver retention problem. He said getting drivers in the doors, he said, quote, getting drivers in the doors seems to be less challenging than keeping them. That being said, I think 18 years old on average are in a place of their lives when they might be more inclined to be away from home. That might be the key to keeping them, end quote. So I think Pax made a good point there. Again, truckers, we'd like to hear what you have to say. Feel free to use the hashtag BigRigBanter, use it on social media, and we definitely want to hear your opinion on this issue. And we know, especially Todd mentioned it, we know you truckers have your opinions on this issue for sure.
Yeah, no, and I think it's definitely an interesting thing to talk about, and just considering the fact that everybody is a little bit different in their path, you know, like Troy and I talked about in the beginning, we kind of maybe went from being responsible to taking things a little less seriously later, and then, you know, rounding out now to where we're just, you know, all on top of it. So, you know, maybe age doesn't have anything to do with it, but it's more of an individual preference and where they're at in their walk.
I agree, for sure. But truckers, before we wrap things up, again, we'll ask you to leave us a review on where you're listening to this podcast, iTunes, anywhere else. We really appreciate it.
Yes, and be sure to go check out alltruckjobs.com. Alltruckjobs.com is our partner brand, and that is a job board website for truck drivers, so you can go on there and find trucking jobs all over the country.
All right, and once again, thank you for listening to Big Rig Banter. I'm your co-host, Troy Diffenderfer.
And I'm your favorite co-host, Lene Rule.
And this has been Big Rig Banter.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Big Rig Banter. For your next job, check out alltruckjobs.com, the premier online source for finding the best driver jobs in the country. Browse hundreds of positions by freight or driver type to get back on the road with confidence. Click subscribe to keep the conversations coming. Until next time on Big Rig Banter.